Sometimes there's no seating whatsoever. You've seen them right off the side of Route 5, right? That is not necessarily a safe or ideal place for bus stops. So there's just a lot of investment that needs to go into there to make sure that every member of this community can be a productive member and has access to affordable and reliable transportation.
Thank you. Public transportation is a good point. It's not something that Wallingford necessarily has the ability to provide. However, to Mr. O'Connell's point, I would certainly look forward to opportunities to also work with those public transportation providers and to collaborate and to increase public transportation opportunities in Wallingford. It's certainly a bigger problem than one silver bullet solving it. But I do think that, generally speaking, access to this town is pretty good. It's just about improving the efficiency. Thank you.
Well, the reality is we have a lot more to impact as a town administration on local public transportation, certainly than we do Route 5 and the local highways. So I think that's not necessarily going to get us anywhere. But these are the kind of things we're hearing from people. And again, we need to make sure that every part of this community, especially parts of the community that are often overlooked, who are more dependent on these public transportation options than other parts of the community, are being looked after. And certainly when it comes to, again, another thing I hear every year, clearing the snow out of the bus stops so that people can wait under them. These are the kind of little things that do add up and make life in Wallingford better for a whole lot of folks.
Okay, thank you. Speaking of transportation, our next question involves transportation history. It's the historic train station right along the train tracks here in Wallingford. So this first response goes to Mr. O'Connell regarding the historic train station. Share with us your vision for that historic building in the center of town.
So it's a very exciting time potentially with this old train station. I know it's been a big topic in the news and in the town council for quite some time. So I'm going to start by saying, full stop, this is the number one priority. We cannot, and I will certainly not support moving I will not support doing anything with that old train station unless an equally suitable, if not better, location can be found for adult ed. Our Wallingford education system is struggling in a lot of ways. One of the ways it's not is our adult ed program. It's one of the best in the state. So to evict them without having a better place in mind for them, I think would be a huge mistake. Either way, that building is in desperate need, and I use that lightly, of maintenance, right? There are some aesthetic issues, but more importantly, there's some very serious safety issues that are the result of just years of neglect. And so that needs to be addressed first and foremost. Say, hypothetically, we do find that place for adult ed, we do perform this infrastructure maintenance. The process for how we utilize that building, and I agree, I think all these things we've talked about in the town council meetings in terms of having multiple storefronts in there, having developers use that area, utilize that area, are exciting, but it has to be a far more transparent process. And I think that's been the biggest issue that members of the council and members of the town have had so far. You know, the biggest takeaway, and basically our mission statement from when I worked at the Antitrust Division, the Department of Justice, was if you do not have an open process, and you're just picking winners and losers based off of personal connections, it's a lose for the town, it's a lose for customers, it's also ultimately a loss for every member of this community. So to the extent that that process can be as open as possible to make sure that we're getting the best possible options, opportunities, and deals for the town of Wallingford and the taxpayers of Wallingford, that needs to be put first and foremost.
Thank you. 2 minutes, Mr. Clark.
Thank you. So yes, we've had several opportunities to discuss the historic train station with the town council. You know, I've been a fan of adult education for a long, long time. I get the opportunity to speak at their graduations and am impressed with the program and absolutely would make sure that it gets an appropriate location if it's being relocated. The historic train station is an opportunity to enhance the vitality in that part of downtown. We seem to do better uptown where North and South Main Street meet Center Street, but that part of downtown by the train station could use a kick. And some type of commercial development is something that we've discussed repeatedly with the town council. There was interest from a potential tenant who approached us several years ago to turn it into some type of brew pub or some type of wine bar. It seems a little big for a single use, and we recently reviewed a multi-use proposal that would have multiple food and drink vendors in there. That's something that absolutely should be considered. Additionally, I would entertain other uses for it. I think the recent proposal included some type of theater or performance element, something that keeps foot traffic in and out of that building at all hours of the day and keeps foot traffic in that part of downtown at all hours of the day is something that is really going to contribute to the success of that part of town, and I would absolutely support it.
Right, so just once again, it's about order of operations, right? We don't want to get lost in these exciting ideas when we haven't found that place yet for adult ed, because it's not so easy. You know, it's a big space, it's a big program that people use day and night, pretty much every day of the week. And it has to be commutable, as we talked about before, with transportation for a lot of these folks that need to use those programs. So again, first and foremost, that has to happen, and I think people have a real concern, understandably, the members who work in that facility and the students about what's going to happen there, and that's why that needs to be first and foremost.
And you have 30 seconds.
Yes. I have supported the relocation of adult education from the first time that we talked about repurposing that building, and I would continue to do so. We will. It's really about finding the right fit and helping that happen. And I think it's a marketing opportunity that I would look forward to participating in. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we move over to housing as an issue. This question goes to Vincent Cervoni first regarding mixed-use development and affordable housing issues in Wallingford. And Connecticut communities are mandated to provide 10% of housing stock as deemed affordable. And legally, there are opportunities for mixed-use development in the downtown area of Wallingford that can be a beacon for attracting residents, workers, or downsizing retirees, even the workforce. Wallingford is generally lower property tax rates in other area towns. How would you continue this characteristic in the future? Affordable housing and property taxes.
Sure. So during my time on the council, we were approached by the Economic Development Commission to support the transit-oriented district downtown. There are tremendous tax incentives that exist there. I think there's total tax forgiveness to some extent. And forgive me for not remembering the details of the program right now, but it is a great program that we put into place, I want to say 6 or 7 years ago. But it hasn't sparked and set fire to the area like we would have hoped that it would have. And I think it needs to be re-examined. While it's a great program and there has been some development down there, we do, Parker Place has expanded. We do see some interest in putting developments in down there. I think it needs to be re-examined to see if we can, in fact, attract developers who are willing to invest in that multi-use that we envisioned for down there. And I would be glad to revisit it and to see that we draw the type of development that will make that downtown area by the train tracks vital. I've supported it in the past, and I would support revisiting it so that we can really get that spark lit.
Thank you. And Mr. Brown, 2 minutes on this issue.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm also in support of that zone, but more eagle-eyed view in terms of what we're looking at and what Wallingford struggles when it comes to affordability of housing and property tax rates. You have a lot of folks, like my grandparents, who lived in Wallingford literally their entire lives, who both worked 2 good-paying jobs, saved up a lot of money. But Wallingford has had, at least from the mayoral side, proposed 18 tax increases in a row now. So if you've been on fixed income for 15, 20 years, that can become untenable for people to stay in their houses. And this does go hand in hand with non-market rate housing. Because another thing that Wallingford really has a dearth of right now is non-market rate housing, especially for seniors. This is the number one thing that came up to a lot of the folks I've talked to in their own houses who are looking for a place to downsize to or nowhere to go, or just can barely afford to stay where they are. But again, they have nowhere else to go. It's the only town they've ever known. No one should ever feel like they have that they have no choice to leave the only community they've ever been a part of simply because the money's run out and the taxes have gone up. And so this is the priority ultimately of our entire platform, right? How do we bring those taxes in, which our proposed budget and our proposed platform would do? For the first time, like I said, in 18 years, we wouldn't have a tax increase proposed by the mayor. But also making sure that we have these housing opportunities for people that need them. Because right now, and I see nonprofits in the crowd as well, we know there's just nowhere for people to go. And this isn't just a Wallingford issue, it's a Connecticut issue, it's a countrywide issue. But in Wallingford in particular, and I'm going off the top of my head here, so I don't remember the exact number, but I believe the state sets a goal of hitting about 10% non-market rate housing in each municipality. And I think Wallingford hovers around 4.5%. So we are well short of that. And we need to not just have a better plan for going forward, because we haven't been progressing the way we'd like to, but actually put our money where our mouth is and start implementing that plan.
Yeah, Wallingford doesn't exist in a vacuum. And when you compare our tax rates to other towns, whether we've made increases or not, we are still competitive as compared to other towns. If you're leaving Wallingford because of the taxes, I question where you're going to go. But I do support housing opportunities for all types, for people who have different income limitations, and I will continue to work with planning and zoning so that we get that done.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you where people are going. They're not going to Colorado, they're not going to Texas, they're going to Cheshire, Southington, and North Haven, who have seen their populations grow while ours has shrunk. And a big part of that is because, yes, our taxes are still competitive, but we used to be dominant in terms of taxes. We used to have one of the top 10% lowest tax rates in the state of Connecticut. We're barely at 50% right now. And so it's all about relatively to where we should be, where we once were, right? The goalpost should be to be reaching that full potential and really achieving it. And we're not doing that. And it's not just the taxes, it's our school systems, it's our infrastructure, all these things play a role.
Okay. Our next question is regarding the town council and about working with the town council. And this question first goes to Reverend John. They have a plan for business expansion and economic development of the town hall. The town council are approving these plans, as you know. So how will you work with local government to ensure that you are building business in Wallingford?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd love to, first of all, and this is going to go not quite off topic, but it's important. I would love to see the town council play a much bigger role in most happenings within the town. I think the biggest complaint I hear from town councilors is they can't address issues if they don't know about it, right? And that's why, even though Mr. Cervoni might have voted against it, we need things like the infrastructure commission, the infrastructure committee, to bring information to the town council to give them an active role to play. I think beyond that, we're talking about probably needing serious charter revisions in the coming years, because as it stands right now, the town council is pretty powerless to do a lot of things. It's the reason we've only seen two, I believe in the last 40 years, 2 vetoes successfully returned, both in the last 4 years. And because of that, the reason for that is it currently takes 7/9, so 7 of the 9 town councilors, as opposed to the constitutional standard of 2/3, to overturn a mayoral veto. Now you might hear me speak on this and say, well, why is he trying to diminish the power of the position he's running for? And the reality is because obviously I think it'd be a great mayor, I wouldn't be up here today. But whenever you have a system that relies on just one person having more or less unilateral power over a lot of parts of the town, no matter how good they are, no matter how well intentioned they are, that's where things slip through the cracks. I mean, right now, especially with the guaranteed minority representation, which should absolutely stay, there's a scenario in which if there's 6 Republicans in the town council like there is now, if I as mayor passed a budget and all 6 voted against it, it would still pass if the 3 Democrats voted for it. That is a broken system, right? Because you should have to be forced to have some level, or at least try to have some level of bipartisanship and nonpartisanship. So all in summary, I really would love to include the town council more in the process of day one, so that when they go into meetings like we just had and talk about what the plans are for the old train station, they're not as surprised by what the plans are, what the discussion is, as we in the public are, right? This needs to be an active process. It needs to be transparent, and I'd love to work with the town council across party lines as much as possible going forward.
Thank you. Mr. Cervoni, town council.
How about that? I think I know a little bit about the town council. And I've been their chairman for 10 years, and I have open communications with all of them, irrespective of party affiliation. I would certainly anticipate that many of them are going to return to their seats in January. And I would certainly, I think I benefit from my relationship with them over the time that I have been their chairman. As far as that role changing to mayor, I would certainly keep open communications with them, try and advance information to them as much as possible. With respect to the state of the charter, during my time in Wallingford, the charter's been opened and reviewed 3 times. The opportunity to change what the charter says in terms of the strength of the mayor has been there each time. And the one time that the proposal was to significantly change the charter and the power of the mayor, that charter revision failed. The two charter revisions that were successful involved keeping the government structure the way it is today. So people have had opportunities over the past 30 plus years to review the charter, and it is what it is as a result of the electorate. But certainly, I've had open communications with the councilors. I've had open communications with the mayor during my entire time on the council. If you pick up the phone and make a phone call, a conversation's going to happen. And I think a lot of councilors wait to have conversations with the mayor until they're at a town council meeting and in front of the cameras. You don't necessarily have to do things that way. And I would certainly encourage individual conversations with the councilors to see what their individual desires are and to see how we can continue to make Wallingford the great place that it is and improve upon it. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Sure. So I guess this is my frustration and my concern going forward. It's the fact that, Mr. Cervoni, you have been chairman of the town council for 10 years. And a lot of the issues we talked about already stay in place. The biggest one, which has been under control, is that level of transparency. There have been time and time again where some members of the councils have been aware of proposals, of agenda items, and the details around them going into meetings, and others have been blindsided by them. It needs to be a process in which the town council is not just a rubber stamp for the mayor's office, because that is not productive for anyone in this town and anyone in this community.
Mr. O'Connell, I have done nothing to conceal information for the public. In fact, I've been painfully aware of the Freedom of Information Act, and I will continue to comply with it. The public stays informed, and my administration will see to it that the public and the council will stay informed. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving to our next question, near the very hearts of some of the room, the auditorium manufacturing and its importance. Wallingford remains on 169 community basis. The question goes first to Vincent Cervoni. Wallingford is the leading exporter of manufacturing goods of 169 towns per capita, so it's a manufacturing giant in the state of Connecticut. Big part of the business community, as you know. And they faced their own specific issues recently during the pandemic, with the supply chain issues, transportation issues. Is there anything that you can do with your positions there to mitigate stress for manufacturers and enhance this powerhouse aspect of our
Thank you for pointing out where we stand in the state economy with respect to manufacturing and exports. I see some people in the room who are contributors to the flow of products out of Wallingford. So it's incredibly important. It's one of those things that makes us a beacon. And I absolutely would do whatever I could to support any challenges that they face in terms of continuing to get supplies in or to push supplies out. And whether that involves, communicating with suppliers, communicating with transporters, providing opportunities for storage, for shipping, receiving, examining where those are available in this town and to make them available for the manufacturers. We employ a lot of people in this town. And those employment opportunities are tremendous for the state of Connecticut. So anything that I can do to make sure that those manufacturers continue to have what they need, continue to receive what they need, continue to have the employees they need, and continue to have the ability to push their product outside of this town, I would absolutely support.
So certainly manufacturing is one of the things that adds to Wallingford's economy and makes it one of the most versatile and diverse economies in the state of Connecticut, something we do very well. And I think, a big part of that has been obviously having an electric division that keeps rates low and is very responsive and keeps energy usage low, or energy costs, I should say, low as well. And so we have to do everything we can to protect the current status and future of that division. But if you'll indulge me for just a minute, another part of why manufacturing and many other businesses in town have been so successful for so many generations here in Wallingford has been, and I'll give the Chamber and the Wallingford Center Inc. and the EDC a lot of credit for this, has been these interrelationships amongst all the different businesses in town. And I was just reading in the Wallingford magazine that came out for this version, And one of the articles that I believe Steve Knight wrote that was quoting some of Weston Ulbricht's pieces from his book and highlighting the history of, obviously, Ulbricht Company in town and all the great things that they have done and continue to do. And one of the things I talked about was when Fred Ulbricht Sr. was first developing that business, was first getting off the ground, he partnered with so many businesses and families in the community. I'm one of the benefits of that as well, because it was my great-grandfather, Frank Glenn, who had the Glenn Machine Shop, who also partnered with Ulbricht, among many other businesses. And it was one of these situations in which it set a culture of a rising tide raises all boats, right? And I think this is the kind of thing that, regardless of who sits in the mayor's office come January, it's a culture that's going to persevere, right? It's one of the things that's made Wallingford so strong for so long, And manufacturing more than ever is at risk. And this is not a unique problem in Wallingford, This is a problem that Connecticut faces for all the reasons that Mr. Cervoni and Ray just mentioned. So we do need to stay vigilant. We do need to make sure we're offering the incentives to keep these companies that have found Wallingford a home for so long, to make sure they stay here and continue to offer the value and benefit that they have for so many generations now.
Yeah, I think collaboration is a great point, and I've talked about it already this morning. We're all here because we're collaborators. We're members of the business community. We look for opportunities to work together. And I would certainly encourage those relationships. I'd support the chamber. I would support other business member organizations so that you can work together and you can help to solve each other's problems. Thank you.
Sure, and maybe I'll be a little more specific. Here's how we can actually do a better job of promoting collaboration as a town, right? Having these networking events are a huge help, and obviously the Quinnipiac Chamber and Wallingford Center can play a big role in that. But continuing to make sure that these businesses have an open door policy for us as well, so that they can reach out to Town Hall if they're having issues, so that we can start addressing those issues before they happen. And that includes making sure that we notify them of grant opportunities at the state, federal level, and all these other options that exist to them. Because right now I think we're falling short of that goal.
Okay, thank you. And this next question first goes to Mr. McConnell regarding residents and our population. Because Wallingford has witnessed an increase in population over the past couple of decades, like many area towns in Connecticut as well. It's a plateau. With active residents coming into the town, and communities are starting to age a little bit around regions as well. What would you do as mayor to attract more young people to come live, play, stay in Wallingford?
Point to the young guy first, I see how it is. But yeah, no, this is one of the reasons I decided to run in the first place, quite honestly, 2 years ago. Wallingford, yes, in the context of Connecticut has had at least a severe slowdown in population growth, but Wallingford's problem is a little more unique than that. Wallingford has had, I believe, the third or fourth fastest declining youth population in the state of Connecticut over the last 10 years. And most of that decline has happened in the last 6 years. And like I said, I've talked to real estate agents, I've talked to a lot of folks in town. The majority of these families are not moving to different states, they're moving to neighboring towns. And I think you can see that in the population growth of youth families in other towns. And so it's multifaceted, right? Part of it, like I said, is we're not as dominant as we once were in terms of those tax rates, right? So that has played a role in terms of what's affordable. In some ways, which is also a counterintuitive problem, there's not a lot of houses in general that are anywhere near affordability rate for young families to move into. And the biggest factor of all seems to be the quality of our schools. And I don't want to go too far down this path, because of course we have a Board of Education that has a lot of authority on this issue, but the reality is Wallingford school ranking has gone from when my mother went through the school system, which I won't tell you what year that was because I'm afraid she might watch this, but it was one of the top 10 school districts in the state of Connecticut. And at least as of 2 years ago, I think the most recent ranking I saw was we were in the top 100 out of 140 or so. So we need to do a better job there, because look, there's no way around it. Connecticut is an expensive state to live in for a lot of reasons. But it's also the state with the best public schools in the country. And so for a lot of people, when they're looking for where they're going to move, especially because transportation makes this part of Connecticut so accessible, generally speaking, you can live in one town and work in another, they're looking at the quality of school systems if they have a young family or they're trying to start a young family. And so we need to make sure that as mayor, we're investing in our budget and approved by the town council, we're investing the amount of money in our schools that it's going to take to bring them back up to date with the competition they should have. You know, it's the good part is we have that history there, right? We have that history of being a great education system, so there's not a whole lot we need to do to bring that back.
Thank you. 2 minutes.
Thank you. So next year, it'll be 30 years ago that I first moved to Wallingford. I rented a 2-bedroom apartment with a friend. After I moved out of that apartment, I moved into a townhouse. After I moved out of that townhouse, I moved into a 3-family house that I purchased with my father and we still own. After that, I got married and my wife and I moved out to the country near the Tyler Mill. My point is that at every point in my life, Wallingford has had a housing opportunity that I've been able to enjoy. I think this town does have housing opportunities for all ages. I do agree that we need to support our Board of Education to figure out what to do to get our education system back up to competitive with the other towns in the surrounding areas. I do think that we need to look at some things in town like the community pool park and figure out how to get that open and useful and attractive to people, attractive to children and families, and that's a piece of the puzzle. You know, I handle real estate closings. I talk to realtors on a weekly, if not daily basis, and we don't have this mass exodus in town that I keep hearing about. In a town where I'm going to estimate there are 15,000 homes, we typically, in any given month, have 12 to 14 homes in the inventory for sale. And it's frustrating to realtors because they don't have product to promote. And at the same time, if they happen to have one of those houses, it gets sold above the asking price in the post-COVID market. So I'm not witnessing this mass exodus. I think this town has a lot to offer in terms of engaging families and young people. You know, we talked about the downtown transit-oriented district. I do plan to revisit that and see what we can do to spark development down there. These are all pieces of the puzzle that you need to look at. Thank you.
Yeah, well, it's great that anecdotally you may not be witnessing that mass exodus, but the data speaks otherwise. The reality is we are having a huge decline in young families living in this town and young people. On that same note, it's great that we talk about these community spaces like community pool. It's great that you say you support the Board of Ed, but just this year you voted to cut the Board of Ed by their budget by, I believe, $2 to $3 million, and you voted twice now to not reopen community pool and do that renovation project. So there's a big gap here between what we're talking about, because it sounds like we agree on the same things, but what's actually been done. And that's what concerns me the most, is if we're going to make progress, we actually have to do the things that we're saying we're going to do.
Thank you. 30 seconds.
Don't mischaracterize my votes. I have not recently voted against community pool. I have been voted in favor of revisiting the project in the past year when it's come before the council. I'm not talking about anecdotal evidence. I'm talking about what's been going on for the past 3 years in conversations I've been having with people who are in the market. This stuff is real, and that's what matters. Thank you.
Thank you. This is our final question before we get to our closing statement, and our final question goes to Mr. Cervoni first. It's regarding engaging business support. Wallingford has enjoyed economic development achievement in the last year. New record on camp, experienced leadership while considering, and along with the Quinnipiac Chamber of Commerce and other entities, I think we propose to support and engage these collaborative groups to assist your efforts in economic development.
Sure. So Don Crouch is here, and I've known him more than a decade, more than I can count. Patty Powers is here, director of Hubcap. And I know these people. I've known them for well over a decade. And I've worked with these agencies throughout my time in town. I will certainly have an open door for them and their needs, and I will certainly encourage them to collaborate, to work together to create opportunities for businesses in town. You know, you are what keeps this town great. And I will certainly support every opportunity I have to make sure that you are communicating, to make sure that you are aware of each other's needs and how you can fill any gaps that you may have in between your various agencies. Make sure that you have available to you the outreach resources that you need to continue business development and enhancement in town. And I mean, that's, you can always open doors for people, but sometimes you have to reach out your own door to make sure that people know that you are there to support them and to encourage them in what they do, because it's really what's best for this town.